Hello and welcome to the Oxygen Addict podcast. We're brought to you every week by our sponsors precisionfuelandhydration.com. You can personalize your fueling and hydration strategy so you perform at your best with 15% off your first order of electrolytes and carbohydrate fuel with the code OA23 at precisionfuelandhydration.com. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm your host, Coach Rob Wilby, and every week we're bringing you an episode of this podcast to help motivate and inspire you. I'm on my own this week. Chris is out, very excitingly, racing gravel racing, so we'll hear all about that in a future edition, hopefully. But a couple of things you can do for us before we get into today's episode. If you could like and subscribe on YouTube, or if you can click follow on the podcast player of your choice. Downloads have been going nuts in Spotify, especially recently. So I'm really interested to hear whether we're reaching a bigger audience there or we're just getting more audience going over there. But it looks like download numbers are growing, but massively growing within Spotify. So maybe there's something positive happening there. So if you are listening on Spotify and you have already clicked follow or subscribe or whatever it is, that is making a difference. It's getting shown to more people. We're getting more downloads. That's great for the visibility of the show. And it's great for us being able to bring you new and better information, better guests every week. So thank you very much. Also, the other thing you can do for us, if you're looking for help and advice with your triathlon training, I'd love you to get in touch. We've had a whole bunch of people join Team Oxygen Addict for coaching over the past month. And a lot of them have come in and said a similar thing when I have a call with them, which is essentially, I didn't really know whether or not coaching was for people like me. I thought it was only for people who were going to win their age group or wanted to go to Kona. And when they've actually had the call and it turns out they're exactly the kind of person that fits in with us and our team, they sort of say, I wish I'd done it earlier. So if that's you, if you're sitting there listening and thinking, I've been thinking about trying to get coaching, get some help with my triathlon for next season, just give us a call. There's a link in the show notes. We can have a chat and we can find out all about you, whether you'd be a good fit for the team. But if you are attempting a 70.3 or an Ironman next year, you know how difficult it's going to be at the best of times. There's an awful lot of hard work involved in doing it. And most people, they know that and they respect it and they understand it. Don't need to make it harder for yourself by trying to do it all on your own and trying to work out all the details on your own. We've been doing this for over a decade now, closer to 15 years. And we know what works for age group athletes who've got busy lives, busy families, busy work things going on. We can help reduce the runway time that it's going to learn, that it's going to take you to learn how to train most effectively for 70.3 and Ironman. Just come straight and get the plan and just get on with it and outsource the worry about whether you're doing the right thing or not to me, and you just get on with doing the training. So we'd love to chat with you. There's a link in the show notes. Just give that a click. Okay. What we're going to be talking about today, it's a kind of two-part podcast, this one. Partly it's for you guys out there who are likers and subscribers on YouTube or listeners on Spotify or the podcast platform and who are not coached by us. Hopefully this information is going to be really valuable to you as well. But I'm also going to try and speak directly to the athletes that I coach because it's a message that is really, really important to get across, but even more so to athletes who are coached, because there can be a compulsion, there can be a drive to do every single thing that you're given in a training plan. And that's a really good thing for probably 48 weeks out of the year. And it's not such a good thing during the off season. So for almost all our athletes, they are now in their end of season break. They are needing to rest and refresh after a long, hard season, ready to go for winter again. We do have a number of our athletes, probably I'd say 15% of them, who are still to race. They might be doing those later season races like Barcelona, like Portugal, races like that. So this information about the end of season break isn't relevant to you right now. And listeners, if you're not coached, it's not relevant to you right now either. But it is really relevant to you once your end of season A race has happened. Say you're going out to Kona. The temptation, ladies, to go to Kona, have a great race and get straight back on with the training after a few days of recovery is massive. And I know that because we see it every year. I felt it myself as an athlete at the end of the year, and I'll talk about some of the mistakes that I made. But it is so, so important to your longevity as an athlete to have a break at the end of every season. Doesn't mean you do nothing. Doesn't mean you lie on the sofa in your pants eating chocolate biscuits, although there should be a small amount of that. But try and make sure you take that break away from just focusing on training so that you can rest and refresh, and you can come back to it in a couple of weeks, in 4 weeks' time, feeling fantastic. But it is so, so, so important. So to my athletes, those that we coach, those that have training plans at the moment, every week of the year, we've underlined to you the importance of looking at what you have actually done last week, looking at your race ready score, looking what score you've achieved out of 100, and how well that reflects, if you like, how well you have done what you've asked or what you've been asked to do. That's such an important habit to get into. But just as important is to let that go during the off season. I do not want any of my coached athletes looking at their race ready score and worrying that it's dropping now and that that's bad. Because the thing is, yes, your race ready score absolutely should be dropping now, and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It is the time of year where if your race ready score stays in the 80s or the 90s, I would be really concerned about your longevity going into next season, because we just can't maintain that focus for all of the year. We just can't. We need to have a break. As a great example, a lot of you will have heard of Cam Brown, won, I think, 15 times down at Ironman New Zealand. I've not got the number exactly right, but I think he won something like 15 times over 17 or 18 years. And he was close to the podium in some other years as well. And he credits his longevity with every single year after Kona, he'd take 4 weeks off completely from any swim, bike, and run, and he'd go surfing. He'd go on holiday. He'd have barbecues. He'd have a few beers. He would just rest and relax. And that's one of the most important lessons that I think I got from pro athletes. It's not just about how well you train. It's also how well you look after yourself in the long term. And we can learn a massive lesson from that as age groupers. It's really, really important to let some of that fitness go so you can refresh yourself mentally. You can let go of the idea of getting up early to swim or bike or run, and you can just rest and refresh for a month so that you can come back better. Now, obviously, it's a hard habit to break once you've got into the idea of our race ready system is telling me a score at the end of the week that tells me how well I have done my training, and it's predicting how well you're going to race come your A race. Now, that's really important in the run up to your A race. It is not important at all at this time of year. It absolutely isn't. It's great if your race ready score is dropping because it means you're resting and refreshing. You don't need to have a really high race ready score now because you're not racing for another, 25, 30 weeks. I'd be concerned if it stays up there in the really high numbers. And all of our athletes still have training plans during this time, but I put them there for an athlete to choose, like they're choosing items off a menu or choosing food off a buffet. There's a bike session there if you want it, but don't do it if you don't want to. There's some swim sessions there. You can choose to do them if you're going to go to the pool, but I don't want you focusing on going to the pool at 6 a.m. at the expense of all of the other things that you may need to spend extra energy on. Getting extra sleep being a key part of it. Honestly, if you get this right, if you really commit to the end of season break, by the end of 1 week of an end of season break, you'll feel like you're ready to go again, and you're going to have to push yourself to have even more time off. And I would encourage you to have up to 4 weeks of this. But the key is mentally as much as physically, it's letting go of the idea of thinking about triathlon, thinking about racing, and thinking about planning next year. There'll be time for that later on. Get out of the habit of doing it now and just let yourself have a break. Okay, so I've got some ideas for you for things you can do to fill the gaps, but that's the most important message to you. If you're our coached athletes, we want that race ready score coming down so that it's a sign it's ready to rebuild for next year. For those of you not coached by us, if you've had that kind of year where you've built up and you've already had an A race, just as important for you, although there's no numbers attached to this, it's just as important for you to commit to that end of season break and make sure you rest and refresh and you get ready for the next season. The only people this doesn't apply to, the people who are still to have their end of season A race, or people who are just getting into triathlon. They're just starting to build their training. Now, we have some athletes in the team who've just joined us and they're aiming for races next year. Slightly different story for our athletes like that. And for you, if that's you as well, if you're starting to build up to your first Ironman for next year and you're just getting into training, well, we put a plan in place. It's like a transition into winter plan. We've got athletes joined us in September who they are raring to go and they're building themselves up and they're 100% committed. And that's fantastic. These ladies and gentlemen are trying to build their race ready scores, and that's appropriate for them. They're coming from a zero background. We want to see them gradually increase and get themselves ready for that winter block, which for our athletes, we're going to hit sort of the last week of October, the first week of November. So if anyone's out there listening and they're thinking about joining the team or thinking about getting coaching, that is the timeline I would give you. And there's two great things about this actually that will work for you. Number one is you've got, as I record this now, you've got roughly 3 or 4 weeks to get yourself into a position where you commit to coaching for next year, and then you can get some kind of lead up transition training and then really hit the ground running in the last few days of October. I think as I record now, we got a couple of days left of October before, and we're going to start our winter build session. And then we've got 16 or 17 weeks to really make your engine big and strong over the winter. The second reason it's really good for you, if you are thinking about joining us and signing up for coaching, our annual price rise is going to happen the start of November. So you can get in before that. You can lock in the pricing at 2023 pricing. And one of the things we've always done is we've allowed athletes to keep that level of pricing for the lifetime of the membership that they stay with us. So any future price rises just don't affect those athletes as long as they remain a continuous member. Now, I'm not sure we're always going to be able to offer that, but for right now, that's our policy. If you join us now, you get the 2023 pricing, and it won't go up in the future. It might change in future years, but it's not going to. So we've got guys who joined us here now 5-6 years ago and are paying a fraction of what our current membership price is. And good for them. You know, they've managed to hold on. They got in early. They were early adopters. They were early backers of our system. It's clearly worked for them because they've been with us 5 or 6 years. Those ones who stuck with us get to keep that really low pricing, and that's a bonus for them. So if you're looking for coaching, there's your deadline. Get in by the end of October. You can lock in at 2023 pricing. Okay, little story for you. I did a race back in early 2000s. It was called The Longest Day. It was so long back in the past, there wasn't even a branded Ironman in the UK yet. I'd done an Ironman before a couple of years earlier in Australia. It was much more of it was part of an adventure I had when I was down in Australia. So I hadn't committed to triathlon training yet. Came back to England, got into triathlon training. 2005, I think it was. I did a couple of half Ironmans. 2006, wanted to do a full Ironman again. And trained really well for the race. Race went really well. I was really happy with it. And after the race, I absolutely wanted to do nothing more but go and do another race the next year. I think I had about 5 days of downtime while the soreness left my legs. This race was in, I think, late June or early July. So it was the middle of the year. And I just committed back into my training. And you know, some might say fair play. That shows a sign of massive commitment, and you really want to do something, so you commit to it. So I trained and trained and trained and trained and trained. And all through the end of the summer, I trained. All the way into autumn, I trained. Kona came around. I remember staying up really late watching it and then getting up the next day and going and doing a 6-hour ride in early October on my own. I was really into it. I used to get up really early and do my rides in the dark all the way through the winter time. And come about February, I was completely frazzled. You could argue that I'd built a big base of training, but I was completely frazzled. I had to take time off work. I got so tired, I actually got ill because I recognize now, I was driven by a compulsion to train much more so than following any kind of sensible training plan. I would take any opportunity I had to swim or bike or run. And if a free hour came up at school where I was working and there was nothing on at lunchtime, I'd pull my running shoes on and get in the gym and go and run for 40 minutes on the treadmill. I was very much of a more is better mindset. The more I can do, the faster I'm going to go next season. And I ended up so exhausted, so tired, so ill. I had to have time off work, and I was having blood tests to find out what was going on. The simple short of it was I trained myself into the ground. And a big part of that was not having the end of season break, not accepting that season was over and there had to be a space before the next season happened. Completely blew my own doors off. But as these things happen, that's a thing that has really informed my coaching philosophy. And often athletes that come to me who are driven by the compulsion to train and to overtrain and to overtrain to the very limits of overtraining. I get that. I understand it because that's how I was as an athlete. And I had to do a tremendous amount of work personally to get over that personally. But it's managed to inform how I can interact with athletes who feel the same way, and hopefully help those athletes see things in a slightly different way and see the logic in a different way. That means we can have you have a, absolutely committed to a training plan lifestyle, but not at the expense of everything else, and not to the extremes, certainly, that I went to, training yourself into illness and training yourself into, all kinds of trouble. And I've said before, and I'll say this again, my mark of success now is, are the athletes I'm coaching enjoying it so much on a year-by-year basis that they come back year by year by year? And hopefully we'll have a couple of hundred Team OA athletes in their 60s, 10 years down the line, doing Ironman triathlon still, doing 70.3 still, because they love it so much and because they found a way to integrate it into their lives in a sustainable way. And that's what I hope for everybody listening, essentially. I'm not looking here for quick wins for athletes. I'm not looking for really, really high intensity sessions that'll smash people and might, they will produce results in the short term. I was reading some article the other day about very, very high 15-second above VO2 max cycling efforts and the effect it has on fitness. It's very tempting to jump in and do those sessions as the quick win. The Tabata sprint used to be the buzzword back in the day. But that incredibly high intensity also comes at the cost of an incredibly high cost, incredibly high fatigue, and an incredibly high risk of burnout. And that's not what I want for my athletes. I would rather have them make progress across several years than get really fit for 1 year and then get completely frazzled and burnt out and never want to do the sport again. So that's my idea of success as a coach. It's the longevity and the enjoyment of athletes across multiple seasons and decades. So if you're listening to this, and I know not everybody agrees with this, people have let me know this for sure. I met some people when I was traveling and they let me know they were not impressed with my coaching philosophy at all. And, they wanted to go to Kona and do this and that and openly laughed in my face and were quite unpleasant about it, actually. But that's fine. There's going to be people who train in different ways. My challenge to those people is going to be, well, let's see if you're still in sport in 10 years' time and enjoying it. My sense is probably not. And I said this to them at the time, but that's my marker of success. No one can judge me by their own marker of success if it's not the same thing, right? So if what I'm saying is resonating with you, if the idea of enjoying your sport going on for the next couple of decades is resonating with you, then great. This philosophy is for you. And if it's not, you know what? No hard feelings. There's plenty of other coaching ideas out there. So we'll shake hands and you can walk away and that's absolutely fine. So that being said, our end of season break, some ideas here for you. Let's go through what I hope you'll get. Number one, okay, let's talk about the end of season break, the importance of rest and recovery. The training is pretty hard on your body. So you have to give your body a break every week, a break every month, and a break every season. So we have our recovery day every week in our training plans. We have a reduced load week every 3 or 4 weeks, depending on what plan people are on, to help manage and absorb that. We have a recovery month at the end of the season to help rest and refresh the body. So mentally, physically, socially, even spiritually, I want you refreshed at the end of this month. I want you spending more time with your friends and going out more and seeing them. I want you getting to see the physiotherapist more often and getting those niggles looked at. I want you committing to looking after your body a little bit better during this time. Things that you sometimes don't have time to take care of during the season, hopefully, you'll have the time now to take care of them. Now you're not training over the next month anywhere near as much, okay? So think of this as a way to rejuvenate and refresh both your body and your mind, and also some of your friendships that maybe you haven't had time to pay quite as much attention to as you would like to during the season. While that's been said, about having a break from triathlon. Number two here is you don't have to stop moving entirely. And I would, in fact, encourage you to not think of it as stopping moving entirely. We have this habit of daily exercise and it's important. So I'd encourage you to still go out for walks in nature, to still go and ride your bike in nature, to still go and have some swims if you fancy it. But don't have it be totally focused on following a plan. Forget power, forget pace, forget speed, forget heart rate. Go out and have some enjoyable jogs with friends or partners who are not usually able to keep up with you, and really enjoy the time doing that. Have plenty of run walks, go out on an adventure into the hills, see somewhere completely different. Go out on a gravel bike, on a mountain bike, do some cold open water swimming somewhere, go and swim in an outdoor pool at a local, like whatever you can do to refresh that while you keep moving is great, but you don't have to stop moving entirely. Okay, so the kind of cross-training ideas I think can be really, really useful to you here. Something else you can turn some attention to so you can keep moving here is item 3, is the idea of strength training. You can start to pay more attention to the strength training and start to, if you like, build up the strength of your ligaments, your tendons, your connective tissue, so that you're ready to start working on that strength as we go into winter. It's a great time to start working on some lightweight training, especially if we're older, if we're over 50 or we're ladies over 40 even. It'd be really, really important to start to get back into that habit of doing weight training. And I know from speaking to many, many athletes, they often have the good intentions of doing it, but it's the session that falls away. And I don't know if you can see, I've got my weights bar out in the background here to try and encourage me to do a little bit more as well. So it's a change of focus. I'm still moving. I'm going to get the weights bar out. Doesn't have to be heavy. Let's just start getting those basic push-pull movements done again. Shoulder press, bicep curls, bent over rows, deadlifts, things like that. If you don't know how to do these, it's a great time to go to a gym and get a personal trainer and get them to teach you how to do these activities safely. Do them with light weights and start to build up your ability to weight train to train, so that as we move forward, we can start to add some weight training in. And it's a really great way for the longevity of our older athletes to hold on to the muscle mass they've got, to start to add in some regular weight training as well. So have a little look there. Okay. I've talked already a little bit about alternative cycling, but I can't stress enough the idea of getting on your mountain bike, getting on a gravel bike and going out and just riding around for fun, not pushing yourself, not having high intensity efforts, just having a good time riding around in nature. Can be really, really refreshing for you. And it keeps you managing to keep on riding along there as well. Okay, keep those legs moving. Last one I want to talk about really is, it's very important, this. A nutritional reset can be as important as mental, physical reset as well. So really focus on eating really healthily as you are doing this thing. I'd encourage you to not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't go and drink loads of beer. Don't go and eat loads of cakes. Don't go and eat loads of sweets. Try and apply yourself to new habits of what you can sort of start to carry forwards going forward. So eat really well, but eat really, really healthily. That's a really good thing you can do for yourself. So perhaps spend some of the free time you've got planning out new menus, planning out new meals that you can have, and get the recipe books out and look at the things that you're meant to cook. If you can build up a habit of a few different meals you can start to cook now that you really enjoy, that you can carry forward into the winter training block, then fantastic. So it's a really good time to spend that extra time you've got in a way that you can then carry that forwards, and it'll really help you training when you get back into it. Okay, so I can't stress this enough. It's really, really important that we have this end of season break. Okay, guys, I really hope this has been important and informative and helpful to you. And I hope it's given you permission to think, right, I do need an end of season break. I've had this massive season. It's really important to me to take this break. I hope that it's given you the permission to do that. It's a real challenge for people who are driven to achieve something, to accept they have to let something go. You've got to take a step back to take a few steps forward sometimes. So hopefully embrace it. Okay, so just to wrap this up then, here are some discount codes and deals for you. Remember, over at precisionfuelandhydration.com, you can use the code OA23 for 15% off your first electrolyte order. And you can use their free fuel and hydration planning tool to receive a personalized strategy for your next race. These guys are fantastic. They've got the best, in my opinion, the best electrolyte supplements. They've got the best carbohydrate gels. They've got the best tasting energy chews. They're just awesome. So check it out. You can even have a free video call with their team. They'll help you plan your next nutritional strategy so you can get it right in training and then totally nail it in racing as well. So remember, the code is OA23 for 15% off your first order. And remember, over at Team Oxygenetics, I think we've got the most comprehensive endurance sports coaching program for busy age groupers. If you'd like to get in touch with us, please book a call through the link in the show notes. And remember, you've got until the end of October to get in before our annual price rise, and you get to keep that price locked in for the rest of your continuous membership. So time's ticking. If you're thinking about coaching, best time was yesterday, second best time is today. All right, guys. So remember, there's links in the show notes so you don't have to remember them. And until next week, have a great, safe training and racing week. I'm Coach Rob Wilby, and you've been listening to the Oxygen Addict Podcast.